Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time. I'm going to have a go at this Epidendrum that's a mixture of problems. Media starting to go, not gone but certainly on the way, and it has moss in it, as was my wont when that was last repotted, and I am currently progressively going through every single pot that's got moss in it that can do without it and be replaced with the cocoa husk. That's what I'm doing, so as the repots come round. Now this would probably have been better repotted in the autumn, but it got left, and so it's now coming into growth and even into spike. But it's a mixture of kikis and an old plant, and the old plant may actually get thrown out, I don't know. Right, so this is not my normal setup, and I know it looks weird because normally when I'm getting things out of the pot I haven't got my pots and my media yet, but I've just finished another video where all this has been used, and it seems a bit silly putting it all away and getting it out again. That's why it's already here. I don't normally work like that, but today I am. So we can play what's in my pot. I'm hoping there are some good roots in here, because there are signs. It's a bit smelly, that I do know straight away. Get rid of that raffia. So we've got some ferns taking. See, we have got some live roots, but most of these live roots are coming from the kikis. Down in the pot, the roots are no good. I don't think we've got any good roots in the pot that come off the old part of the plant. So if the old part of the plant hasn't got any decent roots, it will get discarded. See, these are all gone. Right, so in that case I suspect it's even separate bits as well. See, that part of the plant serves no purpose. No leaves, right down deep in the pot where it's grown up. Yeah? So that part can come straight off without any thought whatsoever, and that will leave that bit there. Yeah, so that leaves that piece. Now that piece has a cane with leaves on, and what was a kiki that now becomes a plant. Yeah, and quick trim. It's a branching root system, yeah? So this root is firm, but it does have some tips that have branched and been lost. So this will be a combination of good roots and bad roots because the media is starting to go. Now this plant has had a problem that affects some plants in my place. It had scale really bad, and I didn't know for some time, it's a relatively recent discovery, that Bois Duval scale, if that's the type of scale you've got, which I think I have, the bugs themselves pierce the tissue, and they have a toxin in their saliva that affects some orchids really, really badly, and it takes the plant down quite quickly. Other plants seem to be more resistant to it, and although it doesn't do them any good, they sort of put up with it, and they don't die anyway. See, now here we've got an old part of the plant, and we've got a nice little kiki with two branches right at the top of the plant. So we'll save that and plant that up separately. So we now have two pieces. So I'm hoping that I'll end up with an old bit of plant and all the new bits. You know, the trouble is let's carry on doing what I was doing. Let's find the old bits and take them off and see what's left. So that's a separate piece anyway. Now what have we got here? We've got a cane there that has some dying leaves and was deep in the pot. Same again, look, this piece here, if I take that off, it becomes a plant in its own right. To get these roots up here down in the pot, I'd have to bury these canes and they'll rot. So take that bit off, chuck that, and that gives me a plant I can now plant properly. I was just going to say, in a way I hope that root's dead because it's so long, and it is. But it's a branching root system, so I'm only going to take it back so far. It may well branch out. So now we have, including some white roots, a nice little plant, one of which has a spike. Now, is there anything else worth saving? So this bit over here looks a bit green, doesn't it? See, there's a piece of plant there with a spike on. Right, again, over here we have a little tiny kiki. It's only got one root. No. It'll probably fail, and then I've got a failed piece of plant in the pot. That kiki's too small, can't be bothered with it. There's another one growing here, but again I can't be bothered with it. So we're ending up with a green piece of plant here that I'd like to save. Well, that was easy, it just pulled off. Now yet again we have some reasonable roots, well not dead, I wouldn't say reasonable. That one's dead because it's, well, it's going because it's broken. These are not as bad as I was expecting. They could have been a lot better, mind. That one's gone. Right, so a few roots. We've got something to work with. So I'm inspecting, as I'm doing these roots, out of the corner of my eye, I'm checking the base of the plant really thoroughly to make sure there's no scales still on here. Okay, so we have enough there to start a new plant. You know, that's nice and green, we've got 3 spikes coming, and providing the roots, you know, don't fail, it should take off in some new media. Right, so I should get rid of all this rubbish, and then we'll get this potted up. I suspect it will need staking, but we'll worry about that in a minute. I'll be back. Okay, so let's finish this coffee before it's stone cold. At the moment it's nearly cold. Right, now what I would like is a long thin pot. In other words, a deep pot. See if that's deep enough. Not really, there's a way round this, of course. It's a branching root system. I need it down in the pot. You might think that's horrific, but they'll branch. That's better. Just that one. Just one awkward one there. Right. It's a trifle worrying that these roots have got black bits on, but I'm not taking it off because it's I know they're roots and they are by nature wet, but they're not wet, they're dry. I haven't watered this plant for a while, and those black bits are dry. They're not rotten, they're not soggy, they're just black. For reasons unknown. Might have got a bit of root burn off of fertiliser. You never know. Anyway, so mix for this a reasonable amount of cocoa husk. That will hold the moisture in the pot. Some bark, Burnham's bark, so that it doesn't stay wet too long. It needs a drying process as part of it. Like that. And when I've dried my hands off, some charcoal. Don't need much of that. Still not absolutely sure why I add it, but lots of people think it's a good idea. I don't know one way or the other, but it can do no harm. That's the way I look at it. Reasonable growers are using it. I mean, some actually grow plants in chunks of charcoal, nothing else. So it works. But the idea of in a mix is to take out impurities. That's the theory. I've got no way of proving it one way or the other, but as I said, I don't see if it can do any harm. Right, so we have an air cone in the bottom, which I don't want all bunged up, defeats the object. So some chunky stuff in the bottom, You have to bear in mind when something's recently repotted, there's not much root activity in the bottom of the pot. And when you water a pot, most of us would have seen that it tends to dry from the top downwards. Well, with an air cone, it dries from the bottom up as well. So it ends up being wet in the middle. That doesn't happen like that. But if you block the air cone with fine media, there is no drying process from the bottom, and there's not normally a lot of root activity in the bottom of the pot, so it stays wet too long. It doesn't dry off. Now in new media, that probably wouldn't matter that much because it's not off yet. But if it stays soggy wet all the time with no root activity to help dry it off, it will eventually. Right, so what have we got then? I've got a plant there. Another one there. These I don't have to worry about new growths because there aren't any. The new growths are in fact the canes with the spikes on, so they're maturing. Now when I first got this plant, these canes were twice as high as this. They were much taller. So this plant has gradually gone downhill over its time with me. At one point I thought I'd completely lost it. I'm just going to tuck that little kiki in because that has got a new growth on it, and that is it. Now these roots are quite stiff, so these older ones I can actually push and they're sort of going down in the media without breaking. And then we'll get some in round the bottom part of the roots where the gaps are. Tuck it in towards the middle first before you fill up the outside of the pot and can't get at it. Drop some in and just flick your finger towards the middle and you'll fill up those central bits, the bits that will often stay empty if you don't do that. And then you can drop more down the outside, knowing that the middle has some media in there because you've already put it there and you saw it go in. I'm not pushing this very hard, even though these roots are. They appear, on appearance, they look as though they'd be brittle and would snap very easy, but they're actually quite strong and they can bend without snapping. I suspect they've got a limit where they would just crack and keel over, but we won't get to that limit, will we? We'll be sensible. Okay, now there will be some visible roots showing that isn't actually buried in the media. I'm fine with that. Looking at pictures of these growing in the wild, they've often got quite large amounts of roots above moss. But you have to bear in mind with epidendrums, I don't know whether you've got two real types or just ones that grow in different places, but a lot of them are found growing on the ground. To all intents and purposes, they're working like terrestrials. Even though the roots may not be right down in the soil, they may be in the leaf litter, but they are found growing on the ground as well as on trees and branches, so they can be a bit of both. Right, the only other thing I'm going to do is take that leaf off. Right, so that's it. That has no label because it's the only plant that looks like that. I don't need a label, but I will do one as I'm in the mood, and I've got two others to do from the previous video. So that's it. It doesn't need staking. That will support itself. And then hopefully, with the new media and its content, i.e. the ability to stay moist but still have some air, maybe we'll get some new growths from the base, which is what I'd really like. Because at the moment we have one new growth, which is a kiki. So that's that one done. That was in its pot too long, and I would say that that is the cause of most people's problems, is leaving plants in pots too long. Sometimes it's absolute fear of repotting, which is daft. You can have to do it sometime, you just well get on with it. And leaving it too long will cause more hassles than doing it too soon. Yeah, keeping plants soggy, especially when they're not growing, and leaving them in the pots too long. The two main causes of problems that are your own, that you're doing, as opposed to inherent problems with the plant that you bought in the first place, which does happen, we know. So there we go, that's that one done. Another one knocked off the list. All good stuff. See you next time.